Hey everybody, welcome to the next episode of Video Game Collectors on Call. I'm Dr. Gamer Retro as always. Today we have a special guest as always. We have Grant with us from Grant Who Plays Games. Grant, how you doing?
Hey Doc, how's it going? Doing good, man.
Good.
Just
Good.
getting over a thing, little crud, but I'm doing okay.
I was a little worried you wouldn't be able to film today because you mentioned you were sick, but I'm happy to see you here and I do appreciate it. So, you
Oh
know.
no, I'm on the mend. It's gonna be okay. I got a feeling I'll be much better by tomorrow.
And you have a doctor on the other line just in case, so if
Yeah,
something were to happen.
yeah.
So
Hey, you ever seen one of these?
So I always start this by asking kind of the same question. So take me back to the beginning, Grant, when it all started, when you started your love for video games and how that progressed to where you're at now.
Okay. Well, that would have to go way back for our younger viewers. Not quite the black and white days, but definitely a ways back. I was born in the mid to late '80s, more mid than not, and so I grew up during the whole like Nintendo fever kind of time. Like it was a crazy time to be alive because I remember there was nothing cool that you could plug into a TV at your house that you could play. And then all of a sudden there was the greatest video game station ever made ever, you know? That kind of deal. So,
Which would be which one for you?
well, for me the Super Nintendo, but
Okay,
I
okay.
I actually that was my first personal console that our dad picked us up because he was in the Navy, so he was always away on cruise, and he came back one time, and I told the story 1,000 times, and I'm never gonna get tired of telling it. It's one of my absolute favorite video game stories. So it was, like 92 somewhere around there. I want to say 91, and he had just gotten back from a deployment. I think he was in the Middle East for like 6 months or something crazy like that. Like he was gone for a long, long time, one of the biggest ones yet. And he gets back, and we'd begged for a Nintendo for months and months and months. Dad, please get us a Nintendo. Please, we'll be so good. We'll clean our rooms, and we won't throw the bikes on the lawn, and all the things that kids in the '80s did. And so our dad gets a glint in his eye and says, "Well, I'm afraid I heard you weren't good enough for Nintendo, but you were good enough for Super Nintendo." And then that was like
Yeah.
that was the big start of the Super Nintendo thing for me. And so he pulled out
Okay.
a Super Nintendo. Super Mario World came packed in with it, and that was the start of my Super Nintendo collecting and loving. But
So so fat
sorry,
so
go
fast
ahead.
forward maybe a little bit. But from that day, so let's say that Super Nintendo that you got then, do you still own that Super Nintendo?
Mhm. Actually,
Okay.
it's right here. So what you can't see on the other side of the camera is that I have like monitors and then the CRT that I normally play on, and this guy right here. This is my
That's the
childhood Super
original.
Nintendo, which is
Wow.
kind of under a shelf that I built. And I still have all the original games that I had when I was a kid. In fact, so all these guys on the wall here, this is the entire Super Nintendo library from A to
Yeah.
Z. If you're like, oh, well, yeah, but do you have Hagane? Do you have Mega whatever? Well, yeah, I have all of them. So the answer is yes. Everything that was commercially released, I have back here. So that's a whole thing.
So do you collect other things besides SNES? Because I know you have the full library of SNES games, but do you also have other games?
Yeah, like ever since casually I've been collecting and playing for, my whole adult life. My brother would get a PS2, I would get a PS3. I remember getting a PS3 just to play Last Guardian, and then they were like, not so much PS3, and then it came out on PS4. So I don't think I bought like a single game, like maybe Catherine. I think Catherine is one PS3 game I actually bought. But yeah, so I do collect modern stuff, and I have been collecting the whole time, just not quite as serious with the Super Nintendo. Sorry about that. Let me mute that.
So all of your Super Nintendo games behind you, are those, it's hard to tell. Those are custom cases, it looks like. You don't have
Yeah,
actual complete in box games, just the
I
custom cases.
actually I got one here. Yeah, so I do have tons of CIB games too. Like
Oh,
all
okay.
of my childhood games are CIB, and the Vegas Stakes is a whole other thing. That's we can talk about that later. But I have like 58, 70 something copies of that. But it's just because I
Who
want to be
doesn't?
like,
Yeah,
yeah,
every
who
retro
doesn't?
game store, yeah, is like you walk in and it's, you want Vegas steaks? No thanks.
Yeah, so
So,
whenever I would make deals, I would be like, "And why don't you just throw in a Vegas Stakes?" And I kept doing it, and much to my wife's chagrin, like she was actually getting mad that I kept bringing home these stupid Vegas Stakes games. So
wow.
it became like a thing. They're actually right now they're not on display, but I bring them out once a year and have a steak night and just pull them all out and get crazy. But yeah, the cases back there are universal game cases, and it's like a very specific style of vertical case. So it looks more like a rental case, and like it's
Yeah, yeah.
adapted to the format. So it's not just like a copy and paste of the original thing. And
Okay.
then
And
this is
where do you
just
those cases?
You can get them online. Funny enough, the company that used to sell them was like 40 minutes away, and then the COVID times hit, and they stopped selling them. But now some manufacturer sells them, some like stateside retailer, or you can just get them on
Okay.
eBay. So
Because
you can
I don't
definitely
know if
find
you're
them.
familiar with customgamecases.com. I've used them, and they do a very good job, and it looks similar to their work. That's why I asked.
Yeah, those. Let me see if you can see it. Back here on there's like a row with just the. Here, let me grab it real quick.
Yeah, no worries. Everyone always seems to get up and grab stuff during the podcast. You're not the first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I was just saying that every podcast I have, at some point, someone gets up out of their chair and goes and grabs something. So it's kind of like a thing at this point.
I love
If
it.
you don't, you're not doing something right, you know. So
We'll have to make a super code of it later when you're famous. When Summoning
yeah,
Saul
yeah,
comes through, he'll be like, "All right, this was the time when the guy got up."
yeah, yeah. So what
But
did you just grab there for us?
so I think this one might be a custom game case or whatever the other guys are.
Okay, okay,
And this one's a bit phony baloney on account of I didn't feel like printing out the entire thing because I'll get to it eventually.
yeah,
I just wanted to see how it
okay.
looked like, and I was testing out like sort of a gold foil print. See how it kind of catches the light.
So you print those yourself?
Yeah,
Oh, okay, okay,
is
very
the
cool.
idea. Yeah,
So
and then
how long? Oh, go ahead.
yeah, and then all the other ones I printed out on photo paper. So if it's up on the wall right now and it's not blank, it's a full-on label that either I downloaded off of the Cover project, I think it's called, which is just people user-generated content
Yeah, yeah.
creating the inserts, or I made it by scratch. So yeah, I don't have any works in progress, but like these guys are on my desk right now because I'm working on making them.
Next up, yeah, in the queue.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Dennis the Menace, the angry video game nerd classic, and one of the worst excuses for a screensaver I've ever seen, the Timon and Pumbaa game.
Okay. How long did it take you to collect every single SNES game?
Well, it seemed like a long time when I was going through it, but really, I did a little bit of historical research on my own nonsense, and I think it only took like 2 years.
Oh, wow.
That was my brother moved back to on this side of the country to move in with us, and like we lived together in a house for a little while. And so when I went and picked him up, I picked up my childhood video game collection, which was like 2018, 2019, something like that. And so all my Super Nintendo games, all the boxes, I think I actually weirdly had the boxes here for some reason, but all the cartridges were back east. So who knows why? I can't remember. But
So
this
Super
was
Mario World was the first, right? Super Mario World. And then what was the last? What was the last game you got for the SNES collection?
the very last game I got was Zero the Kamikaze Squirrel, which is a sequel and spin-off to Arrow the Acrobat, Sunsoft joint. And my
Okay.
buddy Retro Games Worldwide, is that his fake internet name? Retro Finds Worldwide, something like that.
Okay.
He found it in Colombia and smuggled
Oh,
it
wow.
back because this dude is like a globe-trotting fella. I think he lives in Mexico now, but his big thing is he buys games for cheap like in other countries and brings them back, which is getting harder and harder to do nowadays because everybody knows what they got, unfortunately. But yeah, that was the guy.
So that must have been an awesome feeling when you got the last one. Like, were you expecting it? Did he surprise you with it? Like, how did that interaction go?
Yeah, the last couple of games, it kind of went by fast. It went from I need 200, I need 100, I need 50, I need 10, that kind of deal. And I had put out the call, and really it had only been a couple of weeks. Like that game is pretty rare. It was a really late release, and nobody really cared about it. So it was not bought in big numbers. So the actual finding of it is a pretty rare thing. And I just put out some feelers, and he was like, "Hey, my dude, I got this game. You want to meet up?" And so we actually went to a local game store nearby called Retro Respawn, and we met up there and made the deal.
Okay. Very cool. I think I've been to Retro Respawn. That sounds familiar, but I travel over, so I've been to many game stores. So would you say that's the rarest game that you own, or is there another game that's more rare than that?
Probably not. I would say that one's definitely top 10. I have like Hurricanes is a pretty rare and weird side-scrolling action-adventure game where you play one of the titular Hurricanes, who is a soccer team. It was like
Okay.
an after-school cartoon special. cartoon show. Yeah, it was not a great show. We're solving crimes, we're kicking soccer balls, and I think there was some like vague, hand wavy, like environmental stuff we were doing with. It was awesome. It was peak
Interesting.
'90s
I've
nonsense.
I've never yeah I've never heard of that one. So definitely
Yeah,
rare for sure. What about your
yes,
favorite game in the SNES library?
that's tough. I'd probably have to go with some of the games that I remember playing as a kid. You know, it changes from day to day, from minute to minute, but like I was saying, my dad was in the Navy, and so he was an aviator. So he was like a white knuckle, like Top Gun, you know, kind of like very serious, not quite like great Santini style guy, but he was a tough cookie and a very kind of like hard tackle, like, you know, just a man's man is kind of how he did his thing. And I vividly remember playing games like Super Ghouls and Ghosts or UN Squadron, and my dad watching. You know, he'd come home late from work. Unfortunately, wherever we lived, it would be like he would get traffic coming and going, so he was just like a giant bundle of nerves, and he loved just relaxing and watching me and my brothers play video games. So a
Right.
big one was UN Squadron and Super Ghouls and Ghosts, and those games are notoriously pretty hard. And so
Oh,
probably
yeah.
based on my love of playing with my dad or for my dad is how I got into speedrunning Super Ghouls and Ghosts, because I was like, oh, I can beat this. I can beat this
Oh,
no
yeah.
problem. And so now, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say I've done my research. I do know you hold some records, and I do have some questions on that we're going to get to later. So, without
Absolutely.
ruining it for the rest of the audience. But so when it comes to all the games you have, specifically the Super Nintendo collection, have you played every single one of those?
I have plugged them all into that very same Super Nintendo I just held up. I've played them for a little bit,
Okay.
and the quest started because I thought to myself, oh, well, how many games are there? And so then I started collecting them, and I found out my number, which the number even took a little bit of research to get down to, because some people don't count Exertainment Mountain Bike Racer, Mountain Bike Speed
Which you
Racer,
hold a record in, which I
which
I
I
know
do.
about. Yeah.
I do.
So,
But, you know, we can put a couple of asterisks and, you know, that cross symbol with all the lines where there's like a footnote on a footnote on a footnote. Some from very technically, I do hold the record, but mostly it's because nobody else has A, the means, and B, the interest in recording a full run of it. Because I had to ride that bike for about 40 miles.
oh,
So
wow.
40 miles of like
It's like
a
a
90s
workout.
era Peloton. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was a whole
Do
thing.
and you still have the bike as well?
Yeah, yeah. So
Okay.
it's sort of on loan to me from a buddy who owns a video game store nearby,
Okay.
and it was it was such a serendipitous kind of fate thing where, you know, I was pretty deep into the collection at this point. I was at like, I don't know, for four-ish, 400 games, like 500 games, something like that. And so a big part of it was I wanted to beat every game, which kind of took a backseat when I had my kids. 2.5 years ago, I sort of semi-retired from that, but you know, I still dabble. That's why I do the speedrunning thing instead of like actually streaming and just plodding
It
through.
takes less time to do, right? I mean, if you're
Yeah,
speed running through a game, so
yeah. If
more
you're doing
time
it
for the
right, you're doing it
kids.
fast.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you,
So
where do you buy things like the games that you get? Do you go on eBay? Do you go to stores in town, Facebook Marketplace? What's your main go-to?
kind of a bit of both. One of the best parts about starting collecting like hardcore a couple years ago when I did was all the guys I meet doing it, because guys that are collectors are guys that love the thing that you collect. And I'd say 99.9% of them are really cool dudes that I would have a beer with, and you know, we would play Donkey Kong Country or, you know, play some Street Fighter or whatever. Like all these guys are very, very cool. And so a lot of it has been through lot deals where I would say, hey, you know, I'm looking for some Super Nintendo tapes. If you have any, let me know. And, you know, like I'm fine with a lot, and then we'll break it up, we'll get a deal. And so that's, I think I have like 40 or 50 spare games just sitting around in case any of my buddies need them. So yeah, eBay, a little bit of eBay. Some of my pals are very, very like old school, strict about it. They will not buy anything that they don't see in person. And those guys are really hardcore. I give those guys a serious hat off on account of that's a hard way to do it. Because I would say I got a lot in person, and probably like 15 to 20% of the games on eBay. And like Mercari, that used to be a thing. OfferUp, that used to be a thing, and
Yeah,
Facebook.
yeah.
nowadays a deal on Facebook. Not that price charting is a bad thing. I love that people can easily track the value and see a spike and be like, okay, come on, this silly Piglet game is not the next Silent Hill. Like this is just because Metal Jesus did a review on it or something.
Right,
Like that.
right,
And so it's very
right.
helpful. But then again, everybody's like, oh, I know what I got. This is a grail. Much like with CRTs on Facebook, it's like some old lady selling one for $10 or some guy saying it's a retro game TV for 150. It's worth what you pay for it.
So
So yeah.
what do you recommend to people who are just getting into this hobby, looking for good deals? Like maybe they don't want to pay too much. Where should they find a good representation of what a price should be for a certain game?
Good question. If you're just getting started with collecting, especially in the modern days, I would highly suggest making friends with your local game store. Let them know what you're into, what you're looking for. Let them know you're interested in purchasing big lots. That helps a lot because the price can come down bulk wise. And show up to local expos in almost every state, and like bigger state, like population wise, you will be able to find, or you can travel to a retro game show where dudes will be selling Nintendo tapes the first day, second day, and then third day. That's when they don't want to bring all that stuff home. So you say, hey, let's make a deal,
Right,
my
right.
guy.
You did mention buying in person versus having things mailed to you over eBay, and I just want to point out from my personal experience, you can still get a broken game or something by buying it in person. That's happened to me. I went to a convention like you mentioned and purchased a game, and I was out of my hometown, so I couldn't plug it in and try it till I got home, and that was a week later, and then by then it doesn't work. I can't do anything with it. So just be careful. You can be kind of think that stuff can happen in person as well.
Yeah. Yeah,
Do you
absolutely.
sell do you- Yeah.
Sorry, I was just going to piggyback on that. So absolutely be careful when you're buying, even in person. I always had a way to test it. And at the very least, Super Nintendo games, luckily, are pretty easy to fix. Like, the chances of me opening up a cart, verifying it, making sure it's real, and getting it home and not getting it to run are very, very slim. Like, I would say I've bought probably close to like 1,200, 1,300 games, just over the years with lots and everything that I've then either sold to my buddies or just kept, in case I needed them or use them for spare parts. And I would say like maybe two I have never ever been able to boot. Everything else I've been able to fix or get up and running again. And that's the cool thing about it is there's so many people who care and love this hobby that myself included, there are videos all over the internet about how to fix Super Nintendo's games, how to clean them, how to care for them, all that stuff. So it's if you have a question and you cannot quickly solve it with a bit of YouTube or Google Foo, then you're asking a pretty crazy question.
No, that makes sense. You talked about repairs and stuff. Do you sell many of your games or anything else?
I sell some strange, like very niche accessories. Like, I don't know if you can see over there where Mario's hanging out, there's a piano. That's one of the Miracle pianos. So that's one of the peripherals that the Super Nintendo came out with. One of several. Like you can see the guns up there. The guns are for Lethal Enforcers and Super Scope.
Right. Yeah.
And so those peripherals are required to be able to play the games. And one of the games that I was most worried about, other than Exertainment, which we can circle back to later, was the piano because it's a very rare CIB thing to find, and it's basically like a full-on keyboard that you have to learn how to play in order to beat the game. So at some point, I think there's like 20 or 30 lessons. I will have to learn how to play the piano basically. And so I make cables for that. And it's all the same piano, but it was released for like 5 or 6 different consoles back in the day. So you could have gotten, actually, I have some of the, I'm a silly Billy, I don't know where to point.
It's like
Over here
reverse,
on the
right?
shelf. That's the Sega Genesis version. Such video
Wow.
quality.
Look at this
Things
camera
back then.
work. Look at this camera work.
Yeah. So those guys right there, pointing. Those guys are the Nintendo and Sega version of the Miracle piano. So those guys are all the same piano. The only difference is what they call a miracle core or miracle cable. But it's all just, simple pinouts. There's like a ground clock signal and like 2 other things. And yeah, so I make those from scratch and sell them to pals. I might sell like 1 or 2 a year. I think I have. So in addition to my CRT monitor, my workbench is here where I fix stuff, and I also have a setup. So if I feel like filming or like I'm repairing a Super Nintendo console or a game, I can tape that all right here. But then I have my like bins full of parts for making miracle pianos. I make, if you're a fan of Earthbound, I make air fresheners for the
I
Monster
never got
Museum.
into Earthbound. I never myself. I know it's a pretty popular game, but I just never had an interest in it.
Yeah, it kind of missed me as well. I was a big Chrono Trigger
Yeah.
guy back in the day. I played a lot of Final Fantasy. I was a huge fan of that. And it wasn't until I started streaming retro games, a buddy of mine was just a huge Earthbound guy. And so, it was deep COVID time, and it was a really fun way to connect with him and hang out, and we'd be having a couple beers and playing some Earthbound. And Earthbound is a great game because not only is it cool and fun, it is designed so that you can drink a soda while you're playing, is I think what they say in the game manual. So you can like advance everything with just one hand, so you can have your other hand free for strong
Interesting.
seltzers.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
so
let's.
I'd never beaten it until recently, but I'm a big fan. It's a fun game.
Okay. Let's
Definitely
move on
don't pay full
to.
price for it though, please. Like,
Okay.
it's a
Yeah,
fun
four
game,
hundred
a great
dollars,
game. But
350. Yeah.
it's not
Not worth
many
that
hundreds
much.
of dollars and plus more
Yeah.
with cardboard. So
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
find a way to play it any way you can. And I think it's on the Switch Live, and I think it's on
I think so. Yeah.
like there's modern ways to play where you don't have to
Right.
mortgage your house.
Right. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So let's move on and talk about those records. So if no one knew this or caught on by now, Grant also has many speedrunning records. Tell me when you found out that you were insanely good at speedrunning video games.
Insanely good might be a stretch,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I think it's mostly my hard-headedness and my stubborn will to beat these games. When I was a kid, I didn't know many people that could beat UN Squadron or Super Ghouls and Ghosts. But to me, that's what made these games so fun, is because they were so hard. And like most people I knew, I used to have a Super Nintendo plugged in when I was in college, and I would bet people beers that they couldn't beat the first level of UN Squadron or Super Ghouls and Ghosts. Like, it's that hard of a game. So I guess
I know Super Ghouls and Ghosts for sure. I have played that multiple times and died multiple times on that. So how many records do you have? I guess is there a number you could say?
I want to say like I have a couple of trophies, like third, second, first places, and this is all on like speedrun.com. So I'd have to look it up and verify. I can't really remember, but mostly the idea was I would get started on a game. Like early in my streaming career, I was set to beat Axlay, which is one of my favorite shmups. It's a vertical and side-scrolling shoot 'em up. Very, very fun game. Very pretty. Just totally a showcase game of like Konami knew what they were doing. They were real good at it, and they didn't care who else knew about it, because this is a pretty game. It's super fun. Great music, great graphics, fast-paced, and interesting action because it shifts from side-scrolling to vertical. So
How do they
something happened.
how do they
Okay.
verify? Yeah, we're all good. How do they verify those records? Are you recording yourself and sending it somewhere, or how does that work?
Nowadays, everything is verified through video. Even if you were to do it live, no vid, no did is kind of the idea. So after the scandals of Twin Galaxy and Billy Mitchell and, all that Pac-Man stuff, where a lot of those like retro records were like, no, for sure, we were there. We saw him do it. Like, he killed it. He did really good. It's like, and impossible to recreate like Barnstormer's score or whatever. So yeah, every record that I have is verified through video, and usually it's moderated by a small community. Like there's just I think there's like 10 or 15 total scores on the Axlay board. I made the mistake of saying, oh, well, I'd beaten it before. I might as well beat it on hard mode. But hard mode is not just a name. It is very difficult. So it took me like 20 or 30 hours to actually beat it. But that's in no way the longest I've played this silly game.
So you do these live, these speed runs, or do you pre-record them and then send them somewhere to be viewed, or how does that work?
I try to do it live, but with the speedrun stuff, a lot of the times I'll just record me here. Like, that way I can stop what I'm doing and, go take care of the kid or change a tire or whatever I have to do around the house. It's gotten more difficult to do the actual streaming live in person and not make it like an event. Like I nowadays, when I do stream live, it'll be at live events usually. It's just hard to find the time here. It's like going to the gym, it's a ritual of like going someplace and doing something. So the last couple weeks I've been doing retro game night at the brewery that I work at in Los Angeles. So I'll be doing like Tetris, or I'll be doing just random retro games. Or we did like I've fallen in with the Dr. Mario competitive guys, and so I had like I think 6 pro Dr. Mario guys. Man, that was cool.
I did not know there was an underground Dr. Mario competitive like group at all. So
Oh yeah.
that's interesting.
Yeah,
It's a
they
very
have
niche
world
game.
championships, and like every year they do.
Do you personally have any records in Dr. Mario?
This is a rally towel from the this year's Dr. Mario tournaments in Ohio, I think. No, I do not. I am not great at Dr. Mario. I am just okay. Luckily, the community is really good for like training you and teaching you. And there's this fella that made a ROM hack where basically you're playing against like a really, really hard computer opponent, because there's not really a computer mode per se on the original Dr. Mario for Nintendo, and that's what the guys play on. But playing like a really, really good opponent is a lot like if you're familiar with the game, every time you do a combo, you clear like more than one thing, then like stuff drops on the other guy's screen, like garbage pieces. So essentially it simulates just garbage raining down upon you,
Okay.
which is like
It's like
playing a way, way high level fighter. Like
Gotcha.
I keep joking that I'm like, the Krillin at the World Tournament, and these guys are all Super Saiyans because they are really good. But it's fun to watch. It's like each one of them has been a very cool dude or lady who's a dude, and it's been a fun community to get involved with, and I really hope to do more with them in 2025.
What is the hardest record that you obtained? Most difficult?
Probably the Exertainment one.
Okay.
Like,
let's talk about that. Yeah, we had
Yeah.
mentioned it earlier.
Yeah, so back in the 90s, there was a big push for games to not only be games, but have some kind of physical component and also an educational component sometimes too. That was a big, big thing. It was like edutainment was the next frontier. And so for a little while, certain companies tried to make things like the piano, which was an edutainment tool. And I think the same guys that made that software, Toolworks, they made Mario is Missing and Mario's Early Years, like Fun with Numbers, like very like baby games for babies that are like, I tried to get my toddler to play them, and he's like, the screen doesn't touch. There's no Bluey here.
This is not an app. Yeah, no iPad. What?
Yeah, how can I can't like accidentally purchase 5 more of these games. But yeah, so a big push for like things that were games but were also not games. So in going along with that, the company that made, I think they made there was like a baseball bat peripheral too, which was not really like released with a game, but it worked with a lot of games. I don't have the bat, but someday. It's not like necessary to play games. It's just a weird peripheral. So this company called Lifecycle made this bike, right? And think like a Peloton, like it adjusts the hills and the valleys. Excuse me. It'll adjust the resistance so that it feels what you're doing, feels like what you're seeing on the screen. And there were big plans. I think there's like 2 issues of Nintendo Power where they talk about all the big plans that they had for all this stuff. So the idea was they released a gym model, which you would find at like Bally fitness centers, and they released a home model, which you could only buy from a late night infomercial. And a buddy of mine from some other fella who was just a huge, huge collector who was like, I don't know what I'm going to do with this. It's just sitting around. I don't think I really want it anymore. Sold him the gym bike. And my buddy contacted me. He was like, hey, I don't have room for this right now. It was before he opened up a store. Now he has 2 locations, so he's doing pretty okay. Still no room for that bike, though. It's definitely still a coat rack in my arcade right now, much to my wife's chagrin. But he was like, yeah, I know you've been looking for this game. And a way to play it, and I think I got it. So let's do a thing. So we drove out to the middle of the Inland Empire, and hung out with this dude. And I actually bought 2 Super Nintendo games from him. It was when I was still collecting. He was like, "Yeah, if you need any of those, let me know. I'll make you a pretty good offer." And so I think I got like I don't know. I can't remember which games. Like Metal Warriors or Metal Combat.
That's a good one.
Something.
Yeah.
One of them that are robot games that the kids like. And so we got this bike, and we got it home, and I said, listen, I gotta play this game. Is it okay if I use the bike to play it? And he was like, okay, only you. Like, nobody else can use it, but you can totally use it for as long as you need to. And so I took the bike apart, fiddled with it, cleaned it up, make sure everything was working.
So you can only play the game with the bike, right? You can't play it with a controller, so you have to have the bike to play it.
Yeah, exactly. So
Okay.
The ROM is easy to find, but let me go get the cartridge. Hang on.
The first person that's ever left his seat twice during one of my podcasts. So he now holds a new record. We can add that to his record list.
This will be good. It'll be a good visual aid. Very helpful.
I was just telling everyone we can add another record to your list. You've got up twice now, which is a new record. No one's ever gotten up twice. So we'll throw that one on there.
Outstanding. Yeah. Counter goes here for all the... Right. So anyway, with those games, specifically the rare one, the one that's going to cost you an arm and a leg and maybe a mortgage, is this guy right here. Focus. Which is Exertainment Mountain Bike Rally Speed Racer, right? So the Speed Racer part, I will be out of focus briefly, don't worry. The Speed Racer part is what makes it expensive. This is the home version of it, which is just Mountain Bike Rally and Fitness Program Manager. So both games have the program manager, but one thing I discovered was that the program manager does not work on the gym bike. So in order to beat the program manager, which is another game, technically, there is an end to it. I think you have to train for like 30 days. Yeah,
so program manager, so this is like it's just like a training program essentially that it creates and you have to follow? Okay.
So it'll just be like, okay, go for a ride, go do your thing, and it keeps track of all that and records it. So that's the idea. Yeah. And so, you can't play that one on the gym bike. So even if you had the gym bike, you still needed to get the home bike in order to play that. So it's kind of a wild like niche of just very silly, specific Super Nintendo games, but I got to beat them. And so, I don't want to tell tales, but it's not important where I got it from. But I got this tape, and this was when I knew I had to finish. Because this tape, most people don't even count. Because they say, it's not a commercial release. I mean, it was. It had a box, it had a release, it had a barcode. It was a commercial release. It's just the majority of them, they got ripped up and thrown in the trash, and then the bikes were supposed to be sent back to the company or destroyed. So that's why it's such a rare game. It's like stadium events, but just like silly, rare Nintendo games. So, once I got it, I was like, I kind of got to do it. And to make matters even worse, meaning like I had to for sure do it, it was game number 500, game in the collection, and I paid $500.
Okay. Wow.
Which is an insane price.
We don't want your wife to know. Is that what?
No, that's a great price.
Okay.
The current market value for a loose tape is like $1,500, like $1,800.
Oh, wow.
It's an awesome price. Like I paid less for that than Hagane, less for that than Aero Fighters, which are like the top three, like very, very expensive ones.
Gotcha.
So it was a good day.
Is there any game on your list upcoming that you'd like to break a record in?
Hard to say. I have a lot of buddies that are really good at Super Mario, like record breaking, like speedrunning stuff. So that's kind of been on my radar for a while. I have buddies that are really good at Donkey Kong Country, and that run looks like a lot of fun to do. There are a lot of tricks. Like Super Ghouls and Ghosts is not like a visually impressive run. It's just a run that you can't really mess up. Like there aren't a lot of really cool tricks. Like a big part of making a cool speedrun, especially like say with your games done quick, like on like a spectacle level, is games that have a lot of cool tricks and are not boring. And not like, there's 2 auto scrollers in Super Ghouls and Ghosts that eat up at least 4 minutes apiece. So it's kind of a boring game, but it's a hard game. So that's, I don't know, maybe something like a Donkey Kong, or I was tempted to do the Miracle Piano, because there is actually a speedrun scene for it, but it's no way. Like the only other guys that I know that have done it, other than I haven't checked the speedrun records, but there's a fella called the Mexican Runner who has beaten every Nintendo game. That was like his shtick for a while. And so he's beaten it. I think it took him like 18 days or something crazy like that.
And he has records for all these, or he's just plain beat every game? Oh, with records as well.
Yeah, he streamed them. I don't think he submitted that for a record, like to any official site. It might have even been before speedrun was really a thing. Like Speed Demos Archive was kind of like the going place for speedrun score tabulation. Yeah. And before that, it was like Twin Galaxies. But even Twin Galaxies was more like a high score thing,
Gotcha.
And then there were some Japanese sites that did their own thing. But now that speedrun is a thing, like the speedrun.com is like a big hub. And it's a really easy community. Like nobody had beaten that Exertainment tape. So I was like, what if I do it? And so I went through the process and submitted it and like set up the page and did all this stuff. And I was like, new world record? Sure.
Very nice. Very nice. So you mentioned earlier that you own a bar. So is that correct? So tell me a little bit about that. If you want to drop its name and
Yeah.
maybe drum up some business. And you
Yeah.
have game nights, so tell me about those as
Oh,
well.
look at that. Look at
Oh,
that.
look at
He
that.
had the sticker right next
He would
behind.
he.
Like I was ready. No, okay, so asterisk on that as well. I own a very, 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 very small percentage of this bar.
Okay,
So
okay,
mostly I'm an
okay,
investor, and
okay.
with great responsibility comes great guilt. And so mostly like I do stuff around the brewery. Like if we don't want to pay somebody to run plumbing or dig a hole or fix the roof, that's like I'm there for that stuff. Like I'm what's today?
Grant's the
Wednesday.
guy. Yeah,
Grant's the guy. So like I'm gonna
yeah.
go help with a canning run on Thursday, which is like loud, obnoxious, not fun work. But so I do stuff like that around the bar. But also I use my phenomenal cosmic powers to do retro nights. So like this is kind of an offshoot of the retro swap meets that we do. We do a thing called Bits and Beers like every couple months with look at this. I have stickers for all occasions with our pals at LA Video Games. And so that's a store right around the corner. So we'll do a swap meet where retro vendors from across the LA County really kind of gather and we do a thing. And that's where I would do my speed running. Like I would sit there and do a whole big setup and people would come by. I would have a couch and say, hey, come hang out. Let's play a game. So Mondays and Tuesdays are a little bit slow, especially when there's no sports ball, especially during the later half of the year, like your November, December, January. Like it's kind of a slow time overall. Not a lot of drinking holidays or drinking outside of your house holidays rather. So yeah, I started doing retro game nights. So we usually have anywhere between 2 and 4 32-inch CRTs set up with different gaming stations. And the idea is we have real beer, real TVs, real games. So the only thing that's not real hardware is I have like one EverDrive that I use just for Super Nintendo, but everything else is all real hardware. So yeah, it's a good time. And
And
people walk by.
these are competitions, or are they just to have fun, or
Mostly just for
just
fun.
okay?
Yeah,
Okay.
like I'll have it set up so that I can stream and record from one of the TVs specifically. And so I'll play like, I'll do a run of Super Ghouls and Ghosts, like say. Actually, it's funny enough, a couple weeks ago, this fellow was walking by and he was like, yo, are you playing Super Ghouls and Ghosts? That's like one of my favorite games. I've never beaten it. And I said, do you want to see me do it? It's like my
Do you want to
home.
watch me beat it? Yeah, it will not take
He was
long.
like, "No way, dude!" So he hung out, and it was like a command performance where these guys. It was actually an entire band who were just done practicing. So like the whole band came by, and they were like, "No way, dude! We used to play all that. We used to play that game all the time at our old recording space." So I beat
Very cool.
Super Ghouls and Ghosts for them. But yeah, it's just very
That's
casual
awesome.
play, very fun stuff. Like most nights, it's just me and like 2 or 3 other guys coming by, and yeah, so like just a fun, casual way to share my love of gaming. It was a way to hide 4 giant CRTs not in my house, so my wife really enjoyed that.
So you mentioned streaming. Do you still stream currently? And what platforms do you use, and what kind of things are you streaming?
Yeah, I do still stream on Twitch, and then if I do anything cool that I think I can make a video out of, I'll usually clip that and put it on YouTube. I'm too old really to figure out how to work TikTok, but I've tried to make a couple of the TikToks for the kids. But
Yeah.
mostly
Okay.
Twitch.
You need more Riz, I think. Is that what they say these days?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think I have to do like one of these.
Yeah. 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 I don't. Yeah.
I'm not sure really, but that's something. Yeah, mostly Twitch, and it's kind of few and far between, and
Okay.
it's hard to set aside that much time, when I tell my wife, hey, put the kid in a closet somewhere and we'll circle back around and check him for food and water later. So it's, yeah, nowadays
So
I
no.
don't really.
So no set schedule where some people are like every Thursday at 8 p.m. I'm streaming.
Mostly like while I was doing the retro game night at the brewery, the idea was every Tuesday I would be streaming from like 5 to midnight, say. So
Oh,
I,
okay.
I got that going for a good couple weeks. But yeah, I did come down with a bit of crud. So I was going to stream from home, but I really wasn't feeling up to it yesterday. I was very sad panda, but I'm
Okay.
doing better now. I'm still just a bit fevery. So the sweaty is not just me being weird. It's me being fevery.
Well, if you need anything, like we said, there's a doctor right here. So just
Yeah.
keep me on speed dial.
Absolutely.
You mentioned that let's see, SNES was kind of the main console. Would you say that's your favorite console of all time, even though you've collected the most of it?
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
Like
Okay.
it's kind of not fair to compare modern game consoles to it because like I play a lot of Fortnite, but it's not because like I love the graphics or anything.
Okay.
It's just because it's a fun game, and my 40-year-old contingents are big fans.
So I want to put you maybe on the spot here. What's your second favorite console? Because obviously we all knew it was Super Nintendo was number one.
Yeah, it's something of a Super Nintendo guy.
Yeah.
Golly, second favorite console. Probably. I think.
Sound like you were going to say PlayStation.
I was gonna, but it was
Okay.
definitely neck and neck between PlayStation and N64 because I
Okay.
remember it was. Even looking back, like a lot of the things that Nintendo did with the Nintendo 64, where there was such a push to, this is 3D, everything's a 3D world, it just resulted in some really ugly games. But at the time, our minds were bottled because we were like, nobody had ever seen interactive 3D games like that before. But then PlayStation was still doing really, really cool, beautiful looking 2D or 2D stuff, like Crash Bandicoot, kind of like Einhander, one of my favorite shmups on PlayStation, that kind of thing. So I think we tried to fly and run a little bit too quickly with Nintendo 64. Not that there aren't some great games. I mean, like Mario 64 is a legendary game. There's nothing like that. GoldenEye, that's an amazing game.
GoldenEye, yeah,
but
for
then
sure.
For years and years, there really wasn't much. I wouldn't say that there wasn't like killer apps or anything, like nothing crazy for Nintendo 64, but PlayStation made so many cool games. Like you had your Grand Theft
That's true.
Autos, which just got better and bigger and bolder with each iteration. You had, so many cool like Time Splitters. That was a super fun
That was,
first
yeah.
person guy. I was a big fan of that. And then all the weird like I can't remember what the name of them are, but those big battle games like I want to say Onimusha, but that's not right. But like Dynasty Warriors, like those kind of things. Like stuff that was just, it was you with a big spear and really terrible voice acting, and you were battling against hordes and hordes of crazy ninjas. Like that was some good stuff. I was a big fan of that. So
Okay.
yeah, and then
Okay.
all the multiplayer stuff, like your GoldenEyes, that was amazing stuff. I played so much SmackDown with my buddies.
Oh,
Probably
okay.
SmackDown versus Raw, or Here Comes the Pain, the one with Brock Lesnar on the cover. So
Okay.
much SmackDown.
There were so many wrestling games. There were a lot of wrestling games. So one of the questions I always ask all the guests on the show is a controversial topic. So I like to hear people's opinions on the matter to see, different viewpoints. What are your thoughts on graded games?
Well, it's not for me.
Yeah.
And I'm not really a sealed guy anyway. I mean, yeah, I did just hold up a sealed copy of Vegas Stakes.
Right.
But that's
Right.
because it's a game you can buy for $5, and that's cool. Like, it's neat to have that. But, like, from a preservationist standpoint, I guess, maybe, but like me trying to explain to my wife, me spending a couple $100 on a sealed video game or just a piece of cardboard, say, like if you wanted to get the cardboard for the Extertainment game, that's like maybe $1,000 or $2,000 just for a piece of cardboard, and that's wild. Like, my dad was a big stamp guy, he was a big coin guy, and this same thing happened with that collectible market, where the idea was, in order to trust that, especially, before the internet, before pictures, before any of this stuff, you would have people selling coins or stamps in the back of magazines, say, and that's where their grading stuff came from. And the idea was you could lock in the value, say this is a near mint gem, this is whatever, sell it to some guy across the country, he could buy it, and he'd be confident in knowing that that was what he was purchasing. So you saw the same exact thing happen with stamp collecting, with coin collecting, where there was a bubble as soon as all this whole grading mania caught on, and people were like, we're investing. These pieces are never going to go down in value, which, spoiler alert, excuse me. And so I do think that it's a cycle. I think we're on the other side of the big boom, the big bubble, and some of them look cool. Like I have a couple of graded comic books somewhere. They're on the shelf. Hang on, let me go get them. And
He's trying to make that record unbreakable now.
I'm gaming the system now.
Yeah.
That's 3, right? We'll call that 3.
That's 3. 2 more than the next closest person.
Yeah, take that. Was it Moonshine Gaming? Was he the guy that had 2?
No. He got 1. Everyone else had 1. So he did, and then Moonshine, who was on the show previously. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm a big fan of stuff from the 90s, and anything shiny, like that's all you had to say. So, yeah, cool. Or nobody in their right mind would ever buy an Uncle Scrooge comic with a Highland Games thing. One of my other silly hobbies is that I'm a Highland athlete. I throw rocks and logs and sticks and stuff.
Oh, okay.
And so like this display well, like they look cool. There's nothing wrong with that. And if you just want to display it, like, yeah, it was not cheap. I think when I got those graded, it was like 20 or 30 bucks a book. And like that actual comic, I think maybe I spent 75 cents on. Like it's nothing. It's a Garbo comic. But my brother's a big Gambit head, so I had spent like, oh, this is the best Christmas ever. I had spent like a year and a half collecting key Gambit issues. So like the first appearance of Gambit, the appearance in an X-Men annual, that's sort of his first appearance, but it was released a week too early. So like it's a controversial key issue. Like 4 or 5 like big Gambit comics. Then I had them all graded. None of them were like incredibly like 9.8 is like the best you can expect for a comic. And I think maybe one of them was 9.8. But I just thought it looked cool. And I thought, here's a good way he can preserve the value and the integrity of these comics. So not for me. And I really don't think it affects me because I was a big loose guy. Like some of these games, let me see if I have any close by. Like some of these games are in terrible shape. Zoom.
Is that Kirby, it looks like?
Yeah. This is actually a Brazilian copy.
Oh, okay.
See how it says Playtronic on there?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's got 8 Jogos. That's something. That's not nothing. So that's when I was in Brazil for work. I spent like a day or two going to some super dangerous favelas looking for Super Nintendo games, and everybody was like,
That's
"Why
wild.
are you doing that, dude?" So,
Yeah. Why not?
Why not, man?
When in Rome, right? So what kind of advice do you have for people who are looking to maybe just start getting into collecting? Any tips and tricks or things that you've learned along the way?
Well, a good buddy of mine, Ed Payson, aka Anti-Hero Films, I think is his fake internet name. He actually produced a documentary all about collecting stuff. I would get up and get it. It's on that shelf also, but I'm
about
not
collecting
game the system.
games or
collecting
just okay, so not like I thought you meant collecting things in general, so like coins,
very,
games.
very specifically about collecting video games and retro video games. So that's not a bad place to start. He gives great advice, and I think the main thing I would say is find something you love and go for that. Like having stadium events is cool, right? Having the rarest Nintendo, having the College World Championship for Super Nintendo would be cool, but like you don't want to play it. Having a Gane is pretty okay, but like it's more fun to just play the stuff for me personally. But it's all about the journey, and the goal is cool. But much like Stephen King books, the journey is where the actual story is at. Me meeting all these people, me learning so much about Super Nintendo and the history of the games, and me finding these communities has been just so worthwhile and such a fun way to spend my time. And it's pals that to this day, I still call on it. I'm like, hey, I happen to be in some random part of Toronto, say, like, can I come crash with you?
It's Toronto, actually, Grant. The T is silent. Yeah.
Actually, I did watch it. I tried to impress you with my silent T.
No. So no, that's great. I definitely agree with that. I think so. You can kind of see my collection in the background. It's very small compared to yours, but like you said, I have purchased things that I
working on there.
Well, I just purchased things that I want to play, things that, I've played every single one. Well, not every single one, but I plan to play every single one. I actually have another shelf over here that you can't see. Once we finish, I can kind of show you stuff, but I do not collect things that I don't ever plan on playing. I do have some sealed games, but those are sealed games that are sentimental to me, maybe like a game I really enjoyed playing, or it was like for some reason it just holds a lot of value to me. But I definitely agree with your statements there. What if people want to follow you on social media? So we got Instagram, right? That's Grant Who Plays Games.
Yep. Grant Who
Twitch.
Plays Games.
Twitch is the same.
Twitch is the same. Grant Who Plays Games. It's all pretty much Grant Who Plays Games.
Okay. Is the name of the bar Grant Who Plays Games?
No, I wish. The name of the bar is McLeod Ale Brewing Company.
Okay. So if you're in LA ever, make sure you stop by, get a drink, play some games, play Dr. Mario.
Absolutely.
Well, Grant, we're coming up on an hour here, so I try to keep these, within an hour because people can't listen for that long. Unfortunately,
I can't even talk
ADHD
for that
kicks
long.
in. So again, I appreciate you being here. Such a wealth of knowledge, lots of records, some new ones that were set today during this conversation. If anyone ever has any Super Nintendo questions or about any games, I'm sure Grant's the guy. I'll make sure you all follow
Love
him
to
on
help.
social media.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm all over the social media. Instagram is the quickest and easiest way to get at me. Grant who plays games. And if you have
And
any
he's super
questions,
nice. Yeah, super nice and easy to talk to. Yeah, I mean,
oh,
I sent the dude a message. Like he had no idea who I was. I was like, "Hey, Moonshine Gaming said you should be on my podcast," and he was like, "Sweet." And then we like talked like even more than that. So definitely an easy guy to talk to, wealth of knowledge, and I do appreciate you coming on the show today, man. So thanks a
thank
lot.
you, thank you. It was a lot of fun. It was a great convo, and I look forward to seeing the rest of your collection, man.
Absolutely. Everybody, take care. I'll see you next time on Video Game Collectors on Call.